If you found any of my previous videos extremely valuable, you're going to find this one more valuable than that. So fasten your seatbelt, tune in, maybe have a notepad, iPad, tablet, stylus, pen, paper, everything you need in order to succeed. So you can take away notes and clearly not only comprehend, but be able to utilize what I'm going to be sharing in this video. Because in this video, I'm going to be talking to you about how to turn your infatuation into an investigation. And this is the clearest framework used by every single successful person that you've ever heard about and every single successful person that you will hear about until the day you leave this earth. Now, if this is your first time tuning into one of my videos, my name is Samuel I Can Win and Kimwin. I help people create consistent and then colossal cash flow using resources and revenues that are hidden right in front of them. I call that hidden in plain sight. So whilst there's people out there who call themselves teachers, who help you to replace income in 5 to 10 years. Me and my team, we help people to do that in 3 to 6 months. If that's something of value to you, hit subscribe, press like, and do all the other things that you may like. Now, let's jump into this. There are many things in life that we're infatuated by. That might be a person, for those of you who are married, for those of us who have found the loves of our life. That might be a specific target or goal. Okay, so when I say target or goal, I'm talking about wealth creation. If you are interested in developing wealth, if you want to better yourself, if you've said to yourself you believe some of the things that God in the Bible has said that you are supposed to receive, then you may have a specific target. Okay, a financial target, a £10,000 per month target, a £500,000 per year target, a £5 million net worth target, for example. Okay, dollars, pounds, euros, what have you. There may be an infatuation you have around childbearing. Okay, I've met many couples who have said to me, Samuel, we've in some cases flown to multiple different countries to seek multiple different specialists in order for us to have our first child. I've also met other people who haven't necessarily flown, but they've gone from state to state or city to city in order to get support and advice around how they can have their first or their next child. Now, the reason this is so important is because infatuation comes in different shapes, sizes, and forms. And there may be something that you have a divine focus on. Now, the interesting thing to say before we go deeper into how we actually execute this successfully is that many people's infatuations, if we're just using this term loosely, change over time. Okay, so what do you mean by that, Samuel? Well, what I mean is, in one instance, if you are infatuated about marrying the love of your life and then you get married, very often what happens, unfortunately or fortunately, is that no longer becomes your primary focus or infatuation anymore. And this is something we have to be very, very mindful of, because for some of us, we are interested, then become infatuated about some conceptual idea or some level of achievement. We acquire that achievement, we achieve that achievement, and then we wonder why life doesn't feel as fulfilling as it did when we were pursuing that achievement. And I'm here to give you cheat code number one. The reason why life can't feel as fulfilling once you achieve that achievement is because you haven't set yourself to focus on a new achievement. So this is kind of like when you desire to marry, the wife of your life. You desire to marry a spouse to share your house. And then you marry that spouse, you share your house, and you're still believing that you're going to have the same passion to marry that spouse and live in the house when you've already married the spouse and live in the house. Like, you're focused on something that's in the past. Now, if you layer that livelihood to a degree where you've said, okay, my pursuit was that spouse is now in my house. Now what I'm going to do is direct, project, or set out my new approach in terms of my interest for that spouse to be, I want to have the happiest spouse in the world, or I want my spouse, etc. Right? If you develop that interest into a new infatuation, then you can actually take advantage of that situation. So this is the key, and this is where many people have become lost, right? Because many people have set some form of a goal. Many people haven't even done that, but many people have set some form of a goal, achieve that goal, and then get into this limbo where, I don't know, okay, where they just don't know what's going on or how to proceed. Now, One of the things I learned years ago, I heard this from John Maxwell. John Maxwell said in one of his books, the greatest enemy to your next success is actually your last success. Okay. So that's a very important thing to think about as we talk about how to take your infatuation and turn it into an investigation. Now, how can I be so bold? You're asking the question, how can you be so bold, Samuel, to say that this framework you're going to be providing me is actually the framework that has provided success for every single person I've ever thought of in terms of successful. And it's also going to provide success for every single person who's ever going to use it going forward in terms of the successes I'll see before the day I leave this earth. This is how. Because, and actually, let me tell you what it's not because. It's not because I celebrated my 18th birthday in prison. It's not because of that I discovered this principle. It's not because of the fact that after coming out of prison for the second time, I then went and turned my whole life around by studying not one, not two, not three, but 4 degrees. Okay, it's not because of that. It's not because my first degree was a joint major in the fields of computing and statistics. It's not the statistical element. It's not because my first master's that I studied was a master's in statistics. It's not the predictability element from that master's in statistics. It's not because I then went on to qualify and become a teacher through means of my PGCE that I studied. It's not because I discovered the frameworks that teachers learn in order to help the young people they support to earn. It's not because of that. It's not because after becoming a teacher, I then went and studied my second master's, my master's in teaching, and became a master teacher, right? Writing my dissertation on the complex ideals around being a person of color in a East London school, right? And East London is relevant in this because it has been known as a notoriously racist region from times far gone in the UK. Now, it's not because of any of that. It's not because I realized one day that my degrees didn't pay and then decided to do things a different way and stepped into entrepreneurship, replaced my income using real estate and property, or first and foremost, replace my wife's income so she could leave her job, and then replace my income using real estate and property. It's not because of that, okay? It's not because I've been financially free since 2017, when my wife left her job, I think in 2016, and I left my job in 2017. It's not because of that. It's not because I've invested tens of thousands of pounds in trainings, courses, mentoring, coaching. It's not because of that. All of those reasons are not the reason why I understand how powerful what I'm about to share with you is. It's a simple reason. It's because I read the Bible, and inside of the Bible are the secrets to success. And this is a secret to success I discovered from the Bible, and this is why I want to share it with you, because I think it will play the most major part in being a key to helping you set yourself free. Okay, so if you are chained or bound or locked up or trapped in any way, shape, or form that you perceive in your current life, this is the cheat code to help you. So let's jump straight in and let's utilize all of the rest of the time for this video so that you can take away all of this value. Now, the focus for us is to first identify whatever is the area of infatuation. I gave a few examples earlier. That might be to get the perfect spouse for you. That might be to achieve a certain financial goal for you. That might be any of a myriad of things, all right? But first, identify what it is that you are or desire to be infatuated by, right? That's the first thing. Now, the second stage is the crucial stage. We have to turn the infatuation, okay? So we go from what we've identified as we desire to be an infatuation. And in some cases, people don't naturally have these things as infatuation. Sometimes they just have these things as an interest. So look at the things, if you need help with this, look at the things. If you need help with this, let me know in the comments below and we'll do another video. But in a simple sense, if you need help with this, start to look at the things of interest and determine which of them are viable for you to make them an infatuation. Okay, now once you've determined or identified the area in which you have an infatuation, here's the key. We turn the infatuation into an investigation. Now, we're all old enough to have watched one of those detective movies in the past, all right? Whether it's old school Columbo, whether it's something more modern, whether it's Shaft, it doesn't matter what it is, right? I think CSI or whatever the new stuff is, right? Whatever it is, we've all watched those kind of detective movies, series, shows, etc. Now, what do they do? Okay, and you might vaguely be able to see one of my whiteboards behind. Okay, and I say one of my whiteboards because in this studio alone, I have one, two, three, four. I have 5 whiteboards. Okay, 5 whiteboards, and that's not even talking about my computers, right? I've got a computer system here, and I've got a computer system there. Okay, that's 2 different computer systems, and in both of those computer systems, I have whiteboards kind of set up, right? Then I have a tablet here, and this tablet is the whiteboard I use inside of when I'm doing lives, right? So that's another whiteboard. So that's 3 whiteboards, not even, and 3 digital whiteboards, not even including the 5 whiteboards I'm talking about. All right, I've got this whiteboard here. I've got 3 whiteboards over there, which are blue Perspex whiteboards. So they're made of glass, basically, which is something I wanted for years, and then when I got it, I hardly used them, which is crazy. But such is life. And then I've got my vibe board, okay, my actual digital whiteboard. Now, why is it important that I'm sharing with you that I have these 5 whiteboards? The reason why is because what we see in these detective movies, what we see in these shows is the use of a board. Okay, I'm just going to say it again in case you need to pick up your pen. We consistently again and again see the use of a board. Now, I made a bold claim at the start of this video. At the start of this video, I said to you that what I'm going to show you is how every single person you've ever known or ever heard of that was a success, achieved success. But I just mentioned to you a whole bunch of boards. And there may be someone who didn't have a board when they were achieving their levels of success. So I'll give you a quick example, like Nelson Mandela, who spent multiple decades inside of prison. Someone might argue, oh, but he didn't have a board. Okay, now I'm going to say this just so you get this super clear, right? The board doesn't have to be a whiteboard, okay? In many of the movies or the shows you watch, detective movies, they're not actually using a whiteboard. Most of the time they use a pinboard, okay? So why am I sharing this? And I have a pinboard downstairs in my house, right? Why am I sharing this? I'm sharing this because I want you to understand, don't get locked or stuck on the form of the board, right? Because most of the people who you know are successful or who have become successful using this same methodology, which is every single person who you think of as a success in any way, shape or form, they've not necessarily used a whiteboard or a blue Perspex glass board or a vibe board or a digital board. What most of them have used is the canvas of their mind. Okay, when I think about Vincent van Gogh, the famous artist, I know that through understanding or studying him when I was in school, he used the canvas of his mind. Okay, and many of us use the canvas of our mind. These tools, in terms of whiteboards, blue boards, Perspex boards, blackboards, chalkboards, vibe boards, what they are is they are just practical, physical manifestations of this activity of turning an interest into an infatuation, and then turning an infatuation into an investigation. Okay, so they're just a way we get it out of our head. But nonetheless, I want you to understand the boards may change, but the facts remain the same. That if you can turn your infatuation into an investigation, you're no longer playing the normality game. So let's go a little bit deeper. So that's the hack. You want to identify the interest or identify the infatuation. If you have not got an infatuation, choose an interest to turn into an infatuation. That might be your target amount of wealth. That might be a specific type of health. That might be, the wife you want for yourself, okay, or the spouse you want for yourself. It could be anything that's of interest to you. But the moment you find this thing to be of interest, ask yourself, is it worthy to be one of your infatuations? One of my deepest infatuations when I turned 19 years old, 18, 19 years old, was the Bible. I became infatuated with the Bible. And this is how I discovered the secret. But I want you to understand, I became infatuated with the Bible. I became infatuated with the fact that there was a book, which many people use the Bible as an acronym for basic instructions before leaving earth. There was a book that literally outlined the frameworks, the formulas, and the foundations that can be used in order to have success on this earth and beyond this earth. I thought that was a super interesting thing. But then I started looking at some of the evidence towards this. So for example, I'm just going to use some basic things just for the sake of time. But one of the evidences was the fact that this was the best-selling book for multiple decades and centuries. That kind of really hit me. Like, how can there be a book that claims to be basically the words of God, and it's a bestseller for multiple generations? Like, that kind of tells me it's a clue. And most of us know success leaves clues. So because of that, I thought to myself, okay, let me dig deeper into this. Let me learn more about this. Let me discover more about this. And specifically because prior to the age of 19, I had messed up, right? In the words of Jim Rohn, I had messed up. My life was a mess. Like, me handling my life up until the age of 19 was basically mostly a mess, okay? I had become a smoker at that age, right? I'd been smoking. I had I had very poor long-term relationships. Let me put it that way, right? These were long-term relationships which didn't turn out the way I thought a long-term relationship would or should turn out, right? So there was relationships which were a mess. There was my health, which was a mess because I was smoking, right? And bear in mind, I'm a person who my dad raised me swimming from young, right? So swimming is I believe, a high intensity stamina sport, similar to playing football or soccer, etc., wherever you're based in the world. So for me, I was raised on these high intensity stamina sports, but I was smoking. So I'm sure you can understand how mentally perplexing that may have been for me at the time, because whilst you're destroying your lung capacity, your ability to have stamina, you're mindful that, one of the biggest endeavors that you have in your life, or that you were raised with in your life, is to do something which requires your lung capacity and your stamina. So all of that was a bit crazy, but that was life, right? So there was so much more, right, that I had messed around with. Okay, I before the age of 16, I was engaging in crime. Okay, and the challenge with that is, and I've served the time for that, just so you know, right? And the challenge with that is that it was skewing my ability to generate wealth. Okay, so if I had any ambitions for wealth, which I had many at the time as a child, the problem was, because of what I was doing, I was messing up my opportunity to generate that wealth. So even if I made a million, 2 million, £4 million in the way I was making it, the problem is the way I was making it would always disqualify me from being able to have it. Okay, so hopefully that helps just from some context. Now, when all of that had occurred, right, I'd realized, hold on a minute, like I'm doing a very poor job of being in charge of my life, or doing a very poor job of living my life. I discovered the Bible, okay, and I kind of was made aware of the Bible prior, but I discovered it for myself, and I started reading it. Now, here's where this changes, right? My interest, like I just said, I kind of discovered it before then, but then I discovered it for myself. My interest became an infatuation, okay? I discovered it for myself, okay? Now, when my interest became an infatuation, the next thing happened didn't happen because I knew I wanted it to happen. It happened as a natural byproduct of me having this deep infatuation with the Bible, this deep infatuation with the answers to the questions. And maybe because I'm a very mathematically minded person, I always think there's an answer to a question. So I had a bunch of questions, like, how do I fix my relationship situation? How do I fix my finance situation? How do I fix things? Okay. And because I had all these questions, I needed answers. All right. Now, here's the beautiful thing. The Bible came in from being an interest, it got upgraded in my life to being an infatuation, and then I turned my Bible into my source of investigation. Samuel, how did you do that? One of the ways I did that is I started to do what we call word studies. Okay, word studies are where you find a verse in the Bible, or you find a word in the Bible that maybe you don't know what it means. Now, one of the benefits I had, the first Bible I started reading is actually over there, I'm looking at it right now, is a Good News Bible. Okay, that's the translation, which means the English is very, very basic. Then I developed, through things I learned, and started reading the King James version of the Bible, okay, which is the Old English language, which is in that Bible. Now, when reading these Bibles, I'd always come across words that maybe I didn't know due to my limited vocabulary, or maybe I didn't know due to the fact that I didn't learn Old English, okay? So I'd have an idea what they meant, but I may not know what they actually mean. So what I would do is I'd turn those words into a word study. You see what's happening here? I'm not saying, oh, the Bible became an investigation. What happened for me initially was just individual words in the Bible became an investigation. Now, that's a kind of hack number 2 for you, because what you can do when you're studying something that you desire to become an investigation, don't do what most people think we have to do. Don't attempt to investigate the whole thing. You see, when we watch those movies, those detective movies, they're not attempting to solve the crime with one single line. What they're doing is they're trying to build a case of closure, a case of evidence, a case of connections, in order for them to see what's actually going on. And the clearer we have a picture of what's going on, here's something that's super powerful, the clearer we'd have an understanding of what we perceive actually happened. See, that's the slight subtle shift. Instead of trying to solve the problem, try to get deeper into an awareness of just what's going on. Try to understand, like, you see, a perfect example of this is a tree, right? Most people don't realize that trees grow in multiple directions, okay? Now, you get some people who think trees grow in one direction, they go up, right? Surely. You get fairly intelligent people that recognize that trees grow in 2 directions. They grow up, which is what we call phototropic, right? So they grow in the direction of the sun, okay, or of light, okay, phototropic, like photosynthesis, right? They also grow down, okay, which is what we know as gravitropic, okay? They grow in the direction of gravity, which is what we call roots, right? But most people don't realize that actually trees grow in more than two directions. Trees grow in multiple directions. And here's just a third to give you an idea. Trees are also chemotropic, okay? So what's chemotropic mean? It means that they grow in the direction away from chemicals, okay? So if you plant toxic chemicals, or if you pour toxic chemicals near a tree, the roots of that tree will basically divert away from the chemicals, right? Trees also, like if you want a fourth one, trees also grow in the direction of touch. Okay, and this is why when you've got a seedling or a plant, a small plant or a tree that you want to have support, you go and give it the support beam, or you give it the support stick. And what happens with that stick? That stick helps it to align itself, right? Because trees grow in the direction of the direction they're being touched. They grow in the direction of chemicals, or the anti-direction of chemicals. They grow in the direction of light. They grow in the direction of gravity. Now, why is this all important? It's important because each of these incremental directions of growth are each passages in our investigation to discover and study. If you're looking at your wealth creation, don't just look at wealth creation as, oh, I need to achieve this particular outcome. Start with the outcome. Let that be your center, your bedrock. Let that be your center, your North Star, right? But start to investigate that. Let that infatuation become an investigation. Start to investigate that. Start to unlock that. Start to ask yourself, what does this mean? Why does this happen? Where have you seen this happen? Who's been able to achieve this? How did they achieve this? What's like, ask yourself the questions so your investigation can become valuable. Now, there's so much more I can share on this, as you probably could tell. But what I would say is, if you are getting value from this, if you think this is going to help you move further faster in your future, feel free to save this video in your watch later list, or your whatever favorite video list. Feel free to share this video with someone else you think will find this extremely valuable. Side by side with that, feel free to hit the like button so you can tell the YouTube algorithm that this is the kind of value that you actually want to watch, and other people like you would find of value too. Last but not least, I'm going to encourage you to go watch the video that I recorded yesterday so that you can move further faster in your future. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe, because my next video is going to maybe break this down even more. And then let me know in the comments below if there's a specific aspect of what I've shared in this video that you would like even more deep dive into. Good day, God bless. Let's go. As I usually say, small keys open big doors. See you on the next one.